What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Looks like Nintendo is introducing some new downloadable content for what I thought was one of the better games of the year, like straight up, and that's the Luigi's Mansion 3, and then another bit of downloadable content that's free for another game that's out now that we'll go over. Also, we have to talk about what's probably going to end up being a very historic sale for next year with the Nintendo PlayStation going up for auction and some of the, I guess, the dollar amounts that people are throwing around that it could go for. And Capcom seems to be teasing an unannounced game. They're actually having people playtest some new game, and of course, everyone's trying to figure out what that is. So we'll go over all of that and more today, and I also checked my notes, and it looks like we have some Fallout 76 to talk about. Don't worry, it is funny, so we got a lot of stuff to go over today, guys. As always, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit the like button. Again, you guys have been liking the videos quite a bit recently, and it's been helping out a lot, so I really do appreciate that. And make sure you subscribe down below so you can stay up to date on all the gaming news going on in the gaming world. And we're going to start today with Falcom with some odd news, something that caught me off guard a bit, and that is that Falcom apparently is going to be developing their own engine. Now, a lot of times companies will use engines that they source from places like Epic, for example, with Unreal Engine 4, and there are several others that can also be used, Unity, for example, but it seems that Falcom wants to make their own engine that they can use internally going forward. Now, there are some benefits to that. You don't have to pay any type of royalty fee that can eat up a good bit of your margin, but also you have a bit more control internally over the engine. It could be developed more so for your type of game, for example. But it is odd because Falcom is a small company. There's not a lot of people, like, they don't have a huge workforce there, and we've seen how they've struggled at times just getting localization right and games out with some of the ease games. So I am a little surprised to hear that they would be doing something like that. However, it doesn't sound like it's going to be happening anytime soon. They just kind of put this out there, and we'll see how they go about moving on from what I believe they're using right now is Sony's Fire engine, where they go from here and what they even call their new engine. Also, we had talked about previously, Redbox was going to stop renting games, it seemed, and it looks like that is the case. In fact, they are doing a massive liquidation sale for all of their games currently. You can actually head over onto their site now to take a look to see if any of the Redboxes around you have some of these games in stock. I think they're also shipping some out as well, but I believe the idea is there are games left in some of these Redboxes, of course, so they're just trying to get rid of them. And I noticed some of the prices are pretty good. A few that stuck out to me. Death Stranding is less than $30 now. I think that's like $25, and that's not a bad price for that game. I know there's been a lot of controversy around it, but we're past the Game Awards now. It didn't win Game of the Year, so that's kind of like died down a bit in the news. But for that price, it's actually pretty good quality-wise. And the one that I like that I saw there, Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order, that's one of my favorite games this year straight up as well. It is $25. That is a good deal. That is a very, very good deal. But there are a few things you should be aware of when it comes to Redbox. I've talked about this before in a previous video. You don't get the case, you don't get the manual, it's the disc, and it may be in questionable condition. So keep all of that in mind, but of course, it's probably the cheapest you're gonna find a lot of these games, just incomplete. But hey, might be worth checking out what they have because they have a whole bunch of other games in stock as well that you can check out before they're all gone. Oh, and speaking of the Game Awards, actually, did you notice that not a lot of stuff really leaked out? That was something that surprised most of us considering they showed off the Xbox Series X for the first time. They're even naming it and just showcasing a brand new game with Hellblade 2. Well, Jeff Keighley on Twitter talked a bit about this after sharing that a ton of people tuned in for it. They were up 75% over last year, so the Game Awards appears to be growing quickly, like exponentially. There were several charts that showed off the viewership numbers climbing massively. So that's good news there because, of course, that means video games stronger than ever. But check this out. Jeff Keighley tweeted this out here. And he mentions that when they were doing rehearsals, they had a script or a script set up that was not correct. It was a dummy script, essentially, just to kind of have Phil Spencer go up on stage. Maybe it was timed similarly. Maybe he was supposed to be in the same spot. But basically, anyone who was helping rehearse, that was not the correct speech that he was going to be giving. Of course, it was going to be about the Xbox Series X. So it does also go to show you the little extra bits that they try to throw in there. Make sure no leaks get out there, because if somebody had been helping set up and they hear Phil Spencer on stage talking about the Xbox Series X and then Hellblade 2 and all of this, that probably would have leaked out. So hey, good on Jeff for going the extra mile to make sure nothing did get out. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with this DLC that Nintendo's put out, because we have two different games that are getting DLC. One is available now for free, which we'll start with that one first. Here's the tweet that Nintendo put out. As you can see, it says, a free update to Cadence of Hyrule. Crypt of the Necrodancer featuring The Legend of Zelda is available now. Includes Octavo as an unlockable character with his own story, weapon, and skills, plus classic Crypt of the Necrodancer gameplay in dungeon modes. That's Octavo's Ode for Cadence of Hyrule. Good to see a free update going to that game. I do think there are other games that could use some free updates, but Cadence of Hyrule was great. So I'm glad to see more content going there. It appears to be like a whole nother chapter in the story to check out. And if you have not already played Cadence of Hyrule, I do completely recommend it. Again, I think it's an awesome rhythm-based game, although you can kind of turn that off as well if you want. And then whenever you move, enemies on the board also move. So they have got around that aspect as well if you don't want to try to time everything. You just want to view it more as a puzzle game. The other one, though, is Luigi's Mansion 3. Here's the other tweet that they put out that says, the ghost hunt continues into 2020. Get access to 6 new Scare Scraper costumes with matching floors and ghosts, and 6 new Scream Park minigames with the Luigi's Mansion 3 multiplayer pack DLC. Now, if you check out the eShop, you'll see they are bundled together. It's $10. There are technically 2 add-ons. One will be out April 30th, 2020, and the second one will come out July 31st. So it's pretty clear this was not ready to go like before release. This is something they're still working on, and I generally don't mind that when it comes to downloadable content that comes out after the game is out. We've seen downloadable content come out, and it's like it comes out like a month after the game's out, and everyone kind of looks at that and says, could that have been in the game? But then I also see some people who say, well, I'm playing through the game, and then a month later, I want more stuff for it, more content, so yeah, then I'll pick up the DLC. But there's a fine line to draw there, and Nintendo has been alright with their downloadable content. We saw it with Zelda Breath of the Wild. That came way late, right? It took a while to get that downloadable content out, but it was pretty clear they were working on it, and if you wanted it, you had to pay for it, and that basically included a lot of the development that went into it. So Luigi's Mansion 3's DLC appears to be mostly around the multiplayer, and that's all right. I think I would have preferred a good chunk of story downloadable content to buy, because I did like the single player quite a bit in Luigi's Mansion 3. I thought it was really well done. I thought there were a few little bits of pacing issues, but I went over this in a full video review that I did of the game, and I really liked it. It was good. I think it had a good length to the overall game for the single player, and I didn't really get into the multiplayer at all, to be honest. I just wanted to play through the game itself, and I'm also glad to hear that it's been selling well, so I guess we can expect a Luigi's Mansion 4, but the fact that they are still developing content for it does tell me that they have a vested interest in this series, and that's good for Luigi's Mansion fans. And I guess if you wanted more stuff to do for multiplayer and everything, I guess you got something else to look forward to there. And then I'll be curious if they go a step further, like I said, and do some story downloadable content, but something else to look forward to starting in April for Luigi's Mansion 3. And then, of course, you have Cadence of Hyrule out today with its own free patch you can check out. Next up, let's talk about Capcom. Of course, we just had Resident Evil 3 announced at the State of Play just ahead of the Game Awards, and it sounds like we're going to get some more information about it this week. I think starting today, we'll find out a bit more about RE3 and Project Resistance, but it looks like Capcom is already planning on having their next game play tested. Man, the speculation is all over the place online, so we're going to talk a bit about that and where this came from. Well, an email was sent out, and they have Resident Evil ambassadors, and some of them they will pick to come in and play test games that aren't revealed to the public even by title yet. And I'm sure there are some pretty serious NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, that will pretty much ruin people if they go around talking about whatever it is that they played, because there's a chance that doesn't even come out, whether it's in its form that they played or just at all. It could be something that they're just kind of kicking around and they want to focus group it. Well, here's an email that was posted to Reddit, and you can see at the third or fourth paragraph down, it says, also as limited offers to ambassadors, we have invitations to a playtest session of our unannounced title and priority seats at our game show booth. So obviously everyone wants to go back to that unannounced title, and everyone's trying to figure out what that is exactly. Now, if it's for Resident Evil ambassadors, I think the part that kind of jumps to mind immediately is Resident Evil 8, right? I mean, we're getting Resident Evil 3 soon. We assume that RE8 would be next, although a lot of people thought RE8 would be up before RE3, and not necessarily, mostly because the rumors were that RE3 was actually in development before RE2. So that's going to be interesting to see that one when it comes out, but it could also be talking about Project Resistance was in development first, and then RE3 got put on there, so we'll see all of that when it comes out in just a couple of months, which, again, interesting there on that release date. So, RE8 or, I don't know, what about Dino Crisis? See, Dino Crisis has been talked about quite a bit as getting remade by Capcom with their current streak of just grabbing these older type of games like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 and remaking them completely with new control style, visuals that are off the charts, obviously. So can you imagine Dino Crisis right now coming back and being in that same visual fidelity that we currently have RE2 and soon to be RE3, and even a different control scheme maybe mirroring like what those are currently? That would be crazy. Oh, can you imagine like the dinosaurs running around and just how like kind of that horror mixed in there? Oh, that would be awesome. And I do think it would sell pretty well. I think people who played it on the PS1 are a bit older now and would see some nostalgia in that. They probably would have to change some things up because there were some tedious parts to that game, but they could probably play around with it to make it a bit more streamlined. And I think it would be a spectacle, because that'd be so amazing to see some of that in current visuals. Even if it goes over to like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, it could get out of hand. It'd be really cool to see. But for now, we just know Capcom is reaching out to some people, letting them know, hey, we got an unannounced game, and we need to focus group it. So who can we trust in this ambassador program for Resident Evil? I think it's down to either RE8 or it's Dino Crisis, but we'll see if anyone actually leaks it. I assume they won't, because I feel like those NDAs are probably scarier than anything out of the Resident Evil or Dino Crisis universe. Next up, let's talk about Fallout 76. On Black Friday, I went to pick up some games. I actually went by GameStop. They like buy two, go, and free, and I was picking out different games, right? And I got to the point where I had to pick out a free game, but it was all like sports titles and Fallout 76, and I really struggled picking out a game. I ended up grabbing Fallout 76 just so I had it physically on the Xbox One, but Fallout 76, of course, has had a pretty bad year. Basically, since it came out, it hasn't been great, right? Even a little before then, they haven't gotten anything right, and we continue to talk about them as just them messing up constantly, and then they offered a subscription service. But now we're to the point where it's just getting hacked. They had a free weekend starting December 14th, and everyone apparently started hacking this game. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people started hacking the game, and I think it had a lot to do with the free weekend where people could just download it. So a lot of the people that came in, well, they started doing some crazy stuff. So from Unknown.me, it's a forum user there, released a series of cheat scripts. Now, they specifically wrote that for the game that was on PC at the time, and it allowed people in the game to spawn weapons, armors, and other objects into the game. In fact, a lot of the stuff had to do with NPCs. They were just dropping different players that were controlled by the computer into the game. They're just running around, and apparently it was just ruining the game for others, as it was actually breaking the game for them, where they would touch the NPC and just fall over dead, or they would have, of course, garbled text and all kinds of stuff around those characters. And at this time on the Fallout 76 Reddit, they are pushing hard for an anti-cheat system, which, I mean, we're to the point where they're struggling just to get this game working correctly for a lot of people, and now you're asking them to implement something that can just ban people through what I assume to be machine learning and just having flags go up based on what you're doing. But I think it should be pretty obvious when you're injecting and spawning weapons and armor and NPCs into the game, something that Bethesda didn't even do to start off with. But yes, that's where we are now. That's the latest debacle in Fallout 76. They had a free weekend to try to bring people in and let them try the game out, and instead a bunch of people that came in ended up just hacking the game. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Nintendo PlayStation. We've been following this thing since it was found. It was found in an attic. And since then, it's pretty much been the talk of the retro world because it is so unique and so rare. And it is in this weird slice of time where Nintendo and Sony worked together to develop a prototype system that would play Super Nintendo cartridges and CDs that were pretty much licensed by Sony, so they would get all the money. Nintendo didn't like that, and they split, and it wasn't pretty, but out came the PlayStation, and of course Nintendo and Sony have been still battling it out technically all the way up till now, and it worked out great for Sony, right, so far, and we got the PlayStation, 1 through 4 now, with some pretty good games, I would say, overall. So it technically worked out for us as well, but that Nintendo PlayStation is going to now be auctioned off, and it looks like it's going to be getting quite a bit of money. So starting February 27th, Heritage Auctions will be having an online auction for this prototype, and it will not have a reserve price, which means that it absolutely will sell. There's no minimum for this thing to go, and I've been seeing a lot of people throw around amounts of possibly $1 million and up. There have been word that the owner has been offered nearly that much, so at an online auction, it's going to go for quite a bit, and I'm sure we'll be reporting it here when it does go down at the end of February, just to see how much money this thing goes for, because that will actually stamp a value on it, because right now, none of us really know what it's even worth. We have estimates, like I said, in the million or so, but until somebody actually buys it at auction and pays for it, well, tell us. And really the question is going to be who also buys it, and will it then just go into a private collection? Most likely, yes. I don't think any type of museum or anything's going to buy it. It's just, I don't think it's in the cards. And I mean, realistically, what are you doing within a museum? You just look at it through glass. I mean, I assume that's what's going to happen in a private collection as well. But let me know what you think this thing's going to go for. I do think it's going to go for north of $1 million. It could end up at like 1.1, maybe even 1.2. It's going to be something else to see what happens at how many bids and who gets this thing. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Den saying, Breath of the Wild 2 versus Horizon Zero Dawn 2, calling it now. And I guess that would be a call out to the a rematch from 2017. If you remember that, it was Breath of the Wild versus Horizon Zero Dawn in the Game of the Year category. And of course, Breath of the Wild 1, we all know that. It swept a ton of awards throughout the year from all different outlets. It ended up being one of the best games on Metacritic. Even now, they did their Games of the Decade, and Breath of the Wild was way up there, so it would be interesting to see that. But you also have to remember, there's still a lot of other games coming out next year that could go up against Breath of the Wild 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn 2. We think Horizon Zero Dawn 2 could be a launch title for the PlayStation 5, so all of that coming together would be interesting. But we also have things like Cyberpunk, right? The Last of Us Part 2, that's going to be a big one. Then we have Final Fantasy VII Remake, Doom Eternal. I mean, the list goes on. And those are all games we know about right now. There could be other games still coming out next year, and I'm going to assume there are, that are going to be talked about in that Game of the Year category. So interesting stuff. I mean, we talked about Resident Evil 3, and RE2 was just in the Game of the Year category, so you never know there. Maybe Capcom can get another Resident Evil into the Game of the Year category there, and it's a remake of an older game, so hey, I mean, you never know. But let me know what you guys think about that. Could we get all of these games coming out in 2020, and what's supposed to be a gap year, by the way? It's the last year for the Xbox One and the PS4 line, going into the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, and we also even have Halo Infinite. It's going to be a close race next year at the Game Awards. I think it's going to be much better than this previous Game Awards, so exciting stuff for 2020. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is Nintendo announcing some downloadable content, paid downloadable content for Luigi's Mansion 3, free DLC for Cadence of Hyrule. Do you like that they are doing paid downloadable content for Luigi's Mansion 3, or would you rather see it for something like, I don't know, Super Mario Party, something that's gone pretty much without an update since it came out, despite selling pretty well? Also, what do you think that Nintendo PlayStation is going to end up selling for? I'm very curious about your thoughts on that one. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.